Okay, welcome back to another author interviews at Crystal Lake. And today our guest is author Dan Fields, and he's going to be talking about his book Harvest Time. So I'm going to turn it over to him now and let him introduce himself. So take it away.
Okay, thank you. I'm Dan, and I'm one of the three authors of Harvest Time. I'm here in Houston, Texas, and just kind of excited to see where this project is going to land, because it kind of came out of nowhere, and it's been the Crystal Lake and Torrid Waters crew have really been looking after us, so it's exciting.
Yeah, sometimes those books do come out of nowhere, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
So give everyone a quick overview of the book. What's it about?
Harvest Time is it's good pulpy fun. It's a supernatural road trip thriller in a style we're branding American Gothic horror. Heartland, good old fashioned mean-spirited fun. It's two young couples traveling west on a camping trip. Classic setup, and a series of mishaps strands them in this drought-ravaged corner of Nebraska right before they hit the Colorado state line, which is the goal. That's sort of the promised land in this book. And, the crops are dead. There doesn't seem to be much activity. It looks like people have pulled up stakes, and the crows that don't have as much to eat are going nuts. They're getting aggressive. Something just seems off here. And then at the end of a farm road, they find one farm left where everything's still green, still thriving, and big shocker, something unnatural is going on, and finding out what is going to ruin everybody's day.
Well, those are the best types of horror books, and I do love a spooky crow, so.
Yeah, well, as many as you like in this one.
Okay, so what were the inspirations behind the book?
Well, in and around, let's say 2008, around that time, 15, 16 years ago, I was living in Chicago. Chris, one of my co-authors, was my roommate. I've known him 30 years. He's an old friend. And we were out of school. We were working night jobs. We were just trying to make something happen, making cartoons. I was in bands, just real starving artist stuff. And I literally had a pizza nightmare about a scarecrow chasing me through a cornfield. But I wasn't sure by the end of the dream if it wanted to get me or if it needed help from me. And it may sound silly, but the uncertainty was the scary part of the dream. That's what freaked me out when I woke up. And, I told the dream to Chris just because we were always tossing weird ideas back and forth. And something lit a fire under him, and he started writing out a treatment. I think originally it was going to be a screenplay. And he started making notes and devising all this mythology, backstory, possible arcs for a longer narrative. So, maybe we still will write a screenplay, but one step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. If it gets turned into a movie, you guys can write the screenplay.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't sound stressful.
Okay, so you did co-author the book. So what was that like, the experience of that?
Yeah, it's been really interesting and kind of fun. I think we all bring various strengths to the project. Chris, as I say, I've known for many years, and Joe, actually, by now I have too. He's one of my best college buddies. So once Chris and I started working on this and thought, well, maybe this is going to be a novel or a script or something, I called up Joe. We'd taken a lot of the same writing classes, film classes, and he would come over and bring some drinks and bring some snacks and just toss ideas into the mix. He's the sweetest one of us. So if there's anything uplifting in there, it's probably him. But we just had a ton of fun with it. We had a screenwriting professor, an amazing guy named Bill Blake, whom we called up, took out to dinner and drinks, and pitched it to him just for practice, just to say, does this have any legs? I mean, it's obviously a pastiche of all the things we were watching, The Wicker Man, Texas Chainsaw, The Mist, Race with the Devil, all this stuff, but we thought it had something, a little fire of its own. And that's exactly what Bill told us. He said, you guys are on fire with something. He didn't know what it was going to be. But he said, hold on to it, keep working on it, or hold on to it till the right idea sticks. And in this case, yeah, it took about 15 years, but it was good advice.
Okay, so what kind of emotional trials do you put your characters through in the book?
Well, one thing about picking up a manuscript in your late 30s, moving into 40, that you started in your 20s, is the life experience and the perspective is so much different, because we had gone our separate ways, stayed in touch, still friends, but Harvest Time went in the drawer. We all moved out of Chicago and started careers, started families, and just started accumulating adult life experience. So when I returned to Harvest Time, I was actually processing some just personal family grief, and it started as a kind of a distraction. We had worked really, really hard on what ended up becoming the first third of the book. It's told in 3 parts, and but we had a vague idea of where this might go or that might go, but I plunged into this crazy extended backstory, and then we jump back to the present. And the more I wrote, the more it became a story it's about keeping families together, and how it involves so much heartache and so much frustration, and it can be overwhelming and it can seem futile, but you keep trying for the people that matter. You don't give up on them. And I never expected that theme or that idea to come out of this wacky drive-in movie we thought we were writing.
Okay, so what's your favorite scene without giving spoilers in the book?
That's fine. I will say right up front, it's really hard to top one of the early scenes, and I got to give nod to Chris Robinson, one of the co-authors. It's his baby, and for shorthand for horror movies, it's basically the gas station scene. It's when you first encounter the first weird local that tells you something's up, and maybe is there maybe another route we could go to get where we're going. That's a great scene. Now, my favorite thing that I wrote comes a lot later, when I give one of our characters, Katie, the controls. She's in the story. She's the archetype, kind of the squeamish one, the sensitive one, the one who just thinks, no, getting out is a bad idea. Going over there is a bad idea. Let's just chill out and not have too much adventure here, because I don't feel right about this. And as the story went along, I got a little bit worried about shortchanging her in terms of character development and agency. And so I went a path where she gets off on her own, and she learns a lot about the central mystery and how to get around it. And she does a lot to bring about the climax, and makes a lot of attempts to set everything right. Now, something that not everybody knows is Katie is based very loosely on someone my family has lost since, not at the time, but by the time I wrote it, it was it became an opportunity for me to give sort of an avatar of this real life person a fighting chance that she didn't get. And it's just one more thing that I don't think a callow 22-year-old would be able to put in a story. But once you've lived and got some miles on you, everything becomes an amalgam of the things that bring you joy, the things that break your heart, and it all somehow seemed to fit together.
Yeah, you definitely, the older you get, the more experience you get. So what was the hardest scene you wrote in the book?
Oh, let's see. I am totally not consulting any notes. The Katie stuff wasn't easy emotionally, obviously, but there is a part where she discovers some very heavy secrets on the farm. Big shocker. A lot of it takes place on a farm. And you wrestle with her, and she wrestles with her natural empathy about what's going on. But the trickiest really came later, or earlier, sorry. The trickiest scene for me was actually the one that we wove around the central idea when you first get to the farm, and the idea of, you know, running for your life in a cornfield and making it seem more scary than silly, honestly. So the mechanics of that, you know, they challenged me. I'm not so much the plot man. I do good moments. I do good backstory. I think I do good fights. I think I do good violence for what it's worth. Chris is the plot man, and Joe is very good with those mechanics too. I can take a really great idea and build it and polish it and fill it out. But when I wrote the third act, I was kind of thinking up the ending on my own to present to them later. So the first draft of that, just getting leaving the clues and getting the things in place that we're going to need to use later. It was fun, but it was a big challenge.
So how long have you been writing?
I've been scribbling most of my life through grammar school. You know, I've always been a musician. I've always been an art kid, an English kid. English class was my zone. And I never really knew what to do with it, where to direct it. I'd write a little sketch or a little story. The first thing I published was in 2015. I started publishing short stories. So it took a while, but I've got files and files full of half-finished projects.
Yeah, I know that feeling too.
I'm sure.
Okay, so why did you decide to write in the horror genre?
I think my family still worries that I just like gross stuff, but I'm sure a lot of people seeing this will understand that, the writers and the creators of this kind of stuff. One, for me, it's fun. It's for fun. It's a thrill. Two, it's therapy. It's you test your empathy, you test your endurance. You know, I think to exercise pure human feeling, I think genre writing, and especially horror writing, is some of the best and healthiest kind of storytelling you can do. That just to kind of clear your mind, clear your emotional pipes out. And you know, it's safe. It's literally just a movie. It's literally just a book, like the taglines say. You know, I know people who jump out of airplanes for fun. I might do it if it was my job, but I'm not jumping into the sky for amusement, you know, and that's my limit. So to me, this is the right venue for just getting it all out.
Yes, I wouldn't jump out of planes either for job or fun. I'm afraid of heights, so definitely off the bucket list, that one.
Yeah.
So, what's the hardest thing about writing horror fiction for you? Did any of the parts of this book give you trouble?
Well, like I say, the overarching plots are the things that really daunt me. I'll get a really cool kernel of an idea, and then okay, well, how's that going to work? How's that going to work? Does that sound realistic? I'm an over researcher, and sometimes it's a stalling tactic just to keep from starting on something or from finishing something. But you know, I just look for the right tone. You know, besides being fun, writing for me is it's an outlet for your darkness. I mean, the people who don't have that outlet, those are the people that end up on the news. And I think if you can provoke nervous laughter, that's, for me, is the sweet spot. You're doing it perfectly. You're Vincent Price. And I had a creative hot streak at one of the, you know, most stressful times of life, which was when I first became a parent. You know, you're sleep deprived. You're constantly anxious about everything, literally about keeping other people alive, about money. And you tell yourself some dark jokes to cope with that. I think most people do, and to get it all out of your mind safely. And some of them turn out to be darn good story ideas. I think the most creative thing I ever wrote was actually another nightmare I had after taking a baby CPR class at the hospital. And it's a little more weird and abstract than that probably sounds, but it's a story called Do Not Resuscitate. And I would love to have something that original again. I hope Harvest Time, people enjoy it as much as they enjoyed that story.
Okay, so what do you enjoy most about writing?
I like that it is something I can do for as much time as I have. It costs virtually nothing, and you don't ever have to be finished with it. There are so many success stories of people who it took them forever. Maybe they only had the one real success, or maybe it started something later in life. Once you kind of get the self-imposed pressure and deadlines off yourself, it is just how I get into my flow state. It is the best thing in the world for just tuning out. And I think we live in a time when being able to do that again safely is more valuable than ever.
Mm. So, who are some of your favorite authors?
Oh, I'm going to try to get a lot in here. Yeah, I think if you read stuff that I've worked on, you're going to see the Stephen King in the background there. You're going to see Joe Lansdale. He's the one, I saw him speak once, and he basically told the audience, it's not the story, it's how you tell it. You can take the craziest idea, you can take the silliest idea, but if you tell it well, you're going to scare people, or you're going to make people laugh, or whatever your goal is. Let's see. I wish I could write as cleanly as somebody like Elmore Leonard or Harlan Ellison. I admire them a lot, but I'm too tempted to be flowery. So, I don't write what they would call lean prose. But let's see here. From my dad, especially, I got Mark Twain, big influence on my my sense of humor. My parents, fortunately, were big supporters, even when I skewed way off their charts with my taste. They're not horror folks, but they're big supporters, even when I scare the hell out of them. So they fostered my appreciation for reading and writing so much. So they have some praise and some blame to bear in all this. Who else? Shirley Jackson, Poe, Steinbeck. Steinbeck's my dude. Salman Rushdie, kind of an outlier, but that's what I'm talking about with beautiful, flowery prose. I don't write his kind of themes, but his style I totally dig. Let's see. Fast forward, more contemporary: John Langan, Laird Barron, Tananarive Due, Sarah Waters, Tana French, Stephen Graham Jones. I'm going to quit, but I draw from a lot of wells, and there's so much. I love that there's so much exposure, especially in the genre market and the horror market now, that I just don't think there was. There's so much discourse, and it's so easy to get hold of this stuff now.
Yeah, and some excellent authors there on that list too.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about some of the other stories you've written.
Yeah, there are about somewhere between 2 and 3 dozen short stories solo that I've published here and there. Lots of them are suspense and or horror. Not all of them. I've done some light magical realism, pretty good Western story, and just in all kinds of publications. My favorite thing is when I can get something read on a podcast. That is a cool new medium that I really have had fun with. Getting one on Pseudopod was huge. That was a big white whale for me that I managed to achieve. And then I want to just plug, if I can do so, there's a guy named Kristen Holland who runs a podcast called Nocturnal Transmissions, and he's done some very, very amazing work with a couple of stories of mine. He's a one-man show narrator, musician, and he's just got this, I'm not even going to try to do it, but he's got this big, rich narrator voice. But I would say check out Nocturnal Transmissions. That was a huge boost for some of my stuff. I do have a 2021 collection of stories I self-published. You can get it on Amazon. It's called Underworlds After Lives, 4 words, 1 comma. Underworlds After Lives. And then Chris and I, co-author, we have published, I think, about 6 stories just out there somewhere under the name Lyman Graves. And that's kind of our gonzo, no holds barred, extreme horror joint nom de guerre, I guess.
Okay, so what's your next project? What can readers expect from you in the future after harvest time?
I wish I had a really clear and easy answer for that. I have notebooks full of projects, full of ideas. Picking one is the challenge, just picking one to focus on. I would love to write something big, sweeping, and epic. I'd like to write my Lonesome Dove. I'd like to write my Moby Dick. I have read Clive Barker's Galilee and John Langan's The Fisherman about 5 times each, and they just make me sick with envy. But Chris and I are talking about another kind of monster book. And then he's also got a really cool Cold War action thriller, completely kind of off our beaten path. We're talking about, Joe has hinted he may have a bananas idea for harvest time too. I'm not totally joking. So I can't say there's a whole lot. I do have a story coming out with, I think, Fabula Press. It's called The Fair Child. It's sort of a retelling. It's sort of it's Irish immigrants in Argentina, but done sort of in the style of a grim fairy tale, which sounds nuts, and it is nuts. It's a wild story. And then I'm trying to think. I feel like there was maybe one more, but look out for me on Instagram or Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, X, whatever. It's Dan Fields Writes. It's pretty easy, just like my name spelled right there that way.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap the interview up here, and I'd like to thank you for being a guest today. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much. Yes, very big pleasure.
And you can find a link to Harvest Time down in the description. So that's it for this episode. So bye for now.
Bye-bye.